been discussing this morning what propelled Trump to his win. And David, your latest reporting focuses on Trump's potential plans to politicize the Department of Justice and how those could lead to chaos, how that could lead to chaos and paralysis inside the department and the agencies it oversees, some of which include the DEA, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. What more can you tell us, and can you perhaps pop in a little bit of what we were talking about before we went on the air?
Sure. So the whole issue, and this is all uncharted water, is that Trump has come in vowing to criminally investigate the Biden administration, the Biden family, maybe Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor. That's never happened before. And the danger, and there probably will be people who refuse to carry out such prosecutions. The Supreme Court, with the immunity ruling, has made it possible for Trump to call the Attorney General and order the Attorney General to investigate Joe Biden. That's now legal, thanks to this decision earlier this spring. The chaos could come if line prosecutors, these are career people who work for Republicans and Democrats, refuse to carry out meritless prosecutions. And you'll see legal battles. We'll all be covering it. And it will be a sort of on steroids version of the infighting and chaos that we saw inside the FBI and DOJ, and really the paralysis. That's the most important thing, disagreement that we saw in the first term.
So if you could explain how there were attempts the first time around. Because so this could be very different because he knows what positions he needs to fill with who.
Yes, he's more skilled now at choosing people. One of the people we are hearing from people, he's just being considered as a possible Attorney General, is a lawyer named Mark Paoletta. He's very close friends with Justice Clarence Thomas. He's tweeted during the campaign that the Biden Justice Department invented crimes against President Trump. There's serious evidence here of mishandling classified documents on January 6th. But he is very much a defender. He defended Ginny Thomas when she was asked to appear before the January 6th committee and has called Justice Thomas our greatest Supreme Court justice. And I think there's a lot of people, in part because of what Trump has said and others, who really believe there is a deep state. They believe that Trump was, did win in 2020. And we saw this in the Durham investigation. That was John Durham, a special counsel who went in to investigate the FBI, James Comey, in the first term. They didn't find these crimes. James Comey wasn't indicted. John Brennan wasn't part of a secret CIA conspiracy. So we don't know what will happen here. They will investigate the Biden family, maybe investigate Jack Smith and Merrick Garland. Will they bring cases? When Durham brought cases, he lost. Juries failed to convict everyone that John Durham tried to convict.
It was largely believed, David, that a lot of these investigations, like James Comer's, for example, were to hurt Joe Biden in a presidential campaign. Comer famously said, well, there's a lot of smoke, no fire yet, but a lot of smoke. And it ended up being all smoke. He never brought any evidence. So is it the sense of people you talk to that they're actually going to continue to pursue Joe Biden and others in this administration, and that maybe that wasn't just a political stunt?
There's political pressure to do that because this was such a central part of his message, the corrupt Biden family. Bill Barr, the Hunter Biden investigation actually launched under Bill Barr. He kept it secret, and just again, and to a credit, and I'm trying to be fair and nonpartisan here, but the Biden Justice Department did prosecute Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden has pled guilty to tax charges. He has been convicted of the gun charges. Senator Menendez, Robert Menendez, convicted. Henry Cuellar, another Democrat. Eric Adams, again. So I'm not sure they're going to find that much, but I do think the early stages you'll see lots of criminal investigations under a second Trump administration.
All right, there's been so much talk about institutions. Will they hold? This largely, for the most part, they held in Trump's first term right up to the moment Mike Pence refused to overturn the election on January 6th. Fears this time that those institutional guardrails are not there. What's the level of concern you would have as somebody who understands the law and people you talk to in justice about just that?
Well, I think Donald Trump has telegraphed the areas that he's more serious about. We know that at times he sort of lost focus, or he would put out tweets and then move on to the next thing. But the Justice Department, and I would also argue immigration powers, are two areas where he is just super focused. And so we've all covered this. We're going to come into the second term, completely fair and objective and see what happens. This candidate that David mentions, it's fine to have a favorite Supreme Court justice, and it's fine to defend the clients in private practice and do so zealously. But this is an individual who's also trafficked in rank and baseless conspiracy theories about the very DOJ that he would potentially run. And so that's something that you may not get a lot of deep soul searching from the new Republican Senate if it's going to rubber stamp. And so the other checks will be the judges who oversee warrants in the subpoena process, the juries, as you just alluded to. If you have a spectrum here of where you're more or less concerned, I think you're more concerned on unfettered executive power, which is military power, potentially how they view or try to view immigration powers, and things they can do that are secret. So we might not find out until the press continues to do its work, which we will do, what's going on. I think anything that's subject to a judge, we have lifetime federal judges. Yes, you can try to forum shop. You can try to get it in front of a Trump appointee or whatnot. We have a lot of other judges. We have an appeals process. We have these juries. And so those are areas where there's some guardrails. There are other areas where not only are there less guardrails, but by the end of the first term, again, Donald Trump himself admitted the goals. The goals were to politicize, to abuse, to target enemies. He wasn't even
tried.
Yeah, he tried. He wasn't publicly claiming we're just going to see where the facts go.
It wasn't just threats. He was actually trying to execute. Go ahead.
It's worth pointing out that as we talk about retribution against the alleged, imagine deep state. The deep state apparently took the night off on Tuesday night, forgot to rig the election for Joe Biden.
Wow. Okay. Ali Vitale, how does this all relate to the now Republican-controlled Senate and the new members there, and potentially Republican-controlled House? And what David pointed out in the break, and that is that some of these people who are hired may just be actings, and they may not need any approval. Does that make sense?
They may not be acting, and we'll see if they can get confirmed or not. It's why we're watching the margins in the Senate so closely. It was sort of a foregone conclusion that Republicans were going to be able to take control of the body, but having a 2 or 3 seat majority when you have people who are still thoughtful, like Susan Collins, like Lisa Murkowski, who don't just immediately vote along party line, having a larger majority means you need to worry less about them, especially when it comes to confirmations, which don't have to be subject to that 60-vote threshold that we often talk about. On the House side, when you talked about the James Comer investigations as all smoke but no fire, the biggest difference in the House right now is there's going to be a lot of smoke and no one left to open a window. Because what you have in especially the House Republican, whether it's the majority or the minority, but it's looking increasingly like it might still end as the majority, you have more people there. Anyone who was a Trump detractor is largely gone. And anyone who's in his allyship is probably going to have gavel power. Think about Jim Jordan, for example, who's going to continue most likely to be head of the Judiciary Committee. We saw what he did with subpoena power this time, but imagine what he does with subpoena power and a marching plan, especially when Donald Trump has made no secrets or no subtleties, as he never is, about what he wants to do in terms of the investigations that he wants his closest allies on the Hill to embark on. So I think the biggest thing that I hear about from Democrats, they say, well, we know what we're up against. We know the playbook. We know what this has looked like in the past. On the Republican side, they say the same thing. And there's also the potential that they're able to walk in with control of the House, Senate, and the White House. And that's exactly what they had in 2017.
And I know these are serious times, but Willie did start with the smoke fire analogy.
Go ahead.
I heard you take that with the opening window.
Yeah.
We know that's off top. That has to be an ad lib because you got that live. So in the level of analysis, that's always exciting.
In-game analysis of the analysis is a very meta moment.
Yeah, that's really good.
Let's take you. You're right when you say that the people who would stand in the way of Donald Trump are gone. In the House for sure, and largely in the Senate. In fact, Marco Rubio said last night, when asked about how they're going to proceed in the Senate, he said, "We will exercise great deference to a man who just won a sweeping, overwhelming mandate." So it will be in service of Donald Trump. So can we take a quick look at the state? That's the House on the left, Senate on the right. There are a few outstanding Senate races here. Do we have an update this morning, Ali, on how those are shaken out?
Well, they've taken away my big board, which is fine.
I know, I'm sorry.
But on the Senate side, I do think that a few of the races that we're looking at there, Nevada and Arizona, are likely to stay in the Democratic column, just based on where they are right now with the vote totals. We haven't called them yet, but that's largely the expectation. And then on the House side, there's a few key races that I'm still looking at. North Carolina's 1st congressional, for example, was in the Democratic column. At this this point, it's looking like it stays there. In Iowa's first congressional, Republicans were worried about the incumbent there. It looks like she may squeak by about 800 votes, so really, really close totals. Maryland 6 is another one where it was a Democratic-controlled seat, but it's basically a 50-50 race right now. If the Republican is able to come out there, then, of course, that's notch another one in the Republican column. Redistricting is a really important story in this House right now because Democrats went in needing to only flip 4 seats. We say only as if it's that easy. But really, they ended up needing to flip 7 because redistricting in North Carolina made it so that they were able to easily win 3 seats. So it's going to be a slim majority. It's still going to be tough for Mike Johnson, especially if they don't change that motion to vacate rule. But generally, Republicans, if they keep the majority, are going to march in lockstep. And then we see what kind of profile Hakeem Jeffries cuts as the leader of the opposition on the House side.
So, David and then Ari, in your area of expertise, what do you think the most realistic potential is in terms of President Trump acting out on his threats when he assumes office?
As the national security editor, I think we are going to cover him and fairly and factually and honestly.
Yes.
He will try to politicize the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, even, frankly, the healthcare, public health agencies, and try to just sort of different facts.
Who are some of the people he's considering for those?
They're all different people like Paoletta who come in with these beliefs about an RFK Jr. The check now is judges and juries, but it's civil servants who have worked in the federal governments for Republicans and Democrats. And right now, my colleague Sarah Fitzpatrick is reporting on this. People are deciding in the Justice Department whether they're going to wait and be fired when they refuse to bring a prosecution, or do they resign now? And these are people that I've written about a lot, and they are not a deep state. They are public servants. They don't make that much money being in government, but that's going to be the check. You know, an FBI agent who refuses to carry out an investigation without probable cause, a prosecutor who does that, you know, and a CIA analyst who's trying to present facts about Russia and China. That's a critical part of the policymaking process. So that's one of the biggest tests to come.